Okay, we are good to go. How's everyone doing today? How are you doing, Frank? I'm speaking like we have an audience right now.
Well, I hope everybody that is coming on and will see this later on are pushing into goodness. And I guess momentarily you'll be introducing the topic. But I've been talking to a number of people that are really experiencing a great deal of stress during these times.
Mhm.
And I guess to kind of start things off, it makes me think of a statement that Marcus Garvey it was actually more a slogan. He would say, "Up, you mighty race."
Mhm.
And of course, he was talking specifically to black people. I just think, as late as it is in the day, for me, rather than addressing it specifically to black people, I want to address it to righteous people because, of course, there's some black nationalists that will be upset with me saying that, and I understand. But it's my belief that when we talk about righteousness, it doesn't have a specific paint job. Now, again, there are people who differ with me on that, and I get that, and that's okay. So I just want to say that, especially, and I'm going to speak on a specific group, us, black people, whatever you feel is going on now that is so bad, there's something called the middle passage. I promise you, I assure you, is worse. So we're the same people that came through that, and whatever it is that's going on now, we can get through it.
For sure. Let me. I'm just putting up the title, setting up some of the other streams. Sorry, but I'm listening. I have a definition of perseverance, which is the focal point of what we'll be speaking about today. Hold on, let me see. Where would I put this under? Job interview. Okay. Cool. So I'm gonna try and bring up a. Well, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Um, well, I could probably share. Yeah, let me share this monitor here. Perseverance. Okay, so you should be able to see that.
Yes, sir.
And let me just add it to the stream so other people can see. Existing. Actually, let me remove that. Capture device. There we go.
Now, what I am seeing on the screen are examples of the word being used in a sentence. Now, was that what you wanted to show, or did you want to show the actual
Yeah, the
definition?
definition was right there. I haven't even.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, I see.
Okay, window capture, and now we gotta go for. There we go. Okay, so now we have the definition for the people watching. I'll just cover you up real, or cover both of us. So then I will read the definition and make that go away. So perseverance is the continued effort to do or achieve something despite difficulties, failures, or opposition. The action or condition of instance of preserving. So that is the some other examples of it. Great internal collectors or curators once collaborated for their perceptiveness and perseverance are now regularly deplored as traffickers in or relievers of stolen goods.
Yeah, so those are some sentences where that word per- perseverance is used. That word at the end, go back down, go scroll back to the definition. That word steadfastness is a really good word. It's an all-encompassing word in many ways. Now, of course, if we're going to talk about perseverance, that means that we are working through something.
Mm-hmm.
And let me start by saying this: choose your battles, choose what it is that you're going to allow your blood to percolate on. I'm going to give you an example. So, a lot of people got their feathers ruffled recently because a very popular running back decided to play golf with the president,
Okay.
and folks decided that he no longer deserved his black card for that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, suffice it to say, you may not agree with him playing golf with the president, but don't allow that to get you in a space where you're off course, where you can't function. Because what does him playing golf with the president or not, how does that align with your purpose?
Right.
See, for a lot of us, perhaps the reason why we're getting worn out is because maybe our focus is off. So let's start there. So for
Mm-hmm.
all of those people who find themselves extra frazzled, the first thing I want to say to you is, are you on focus? Now, and then I'm gonna let you, I guess I'm kind of setting this up, and of course I'm gonna let you chime in as usual. For some people, here's my recommendation: take a news fast. There's a lot of things going on that here's the pushback I'm hearing immediately from some of you. If I stop watching the news, how will I know what's going on? Trust me. Let me promise you something. If it's imminent, someone will call you. I can assure you from personal experience. If it's imminent, if it's that important, I assure you, someone will call you. But in the meanwhile, and I'm trying to get better, Dre, with giving these different products free advertisement. So I'm not gonna call the name of any news outlet unless they're gonna sponsor us in the hundreds of thousands, right?
Mm-hmm. I'll take more than
You
that.
right. You watching these news outlets 24 hours a day, what what else other than depression do you expect? In fact, that's that's the goal. I should tell you, as someone who has studied marketing, negative sells. That's the reason, and of course, Ye understands that. In a previous show, we talked about what he decided of all the images he decided to promote on a T-shirt for the Super Bowl. He chose what most of us would consider a negative image. Why? Because negativity sells, unfortunately. And so for some of us, we have to change our appetite.
Indeed.
We have to change our appetite. For some of us, we actually feel some kind of way if we don't get our dose of negative.
That's a fact.
In fact, if you go, and I'm going to name drop because some people, some people will call him unreal superficial because his message is always so positive. But there's a minister by the name of Joel Osteen. He happens to be pretty popular,
Mm-hmm.
and some people, and I've heard people actually say, and they can't watch him because it's just something about him. What is it about him? The fact that he's always encouraging people? Does that is that disturbing to you? Why would that be disturbing to you? So the first base is to realign our focus. And then for some of us, we have to get on purpose. Now, if you're one of those people who say, well, FLW, I'm not sure what my purpose is. Then now we're on to something because you saying that you don't know what your purpose is would be like showing up to the airport and saying, I would like to book a flight. First question the agent's going to ask you, where are you going? He said, I don't understand. Just get me on a plane. Sir, a plane to where?
You gotta have a destination.
You got to have a destination. And so now you're getting agitated because they won't sell you a ticket. The agent's getting agitated because you won't tell them where to. So there are people, sometimes they go by the title of life coach. And, I've helped people in that area. They're, they're, they're guides that can help you if you happen to be in that category where you don't feel like you know what your purpose is, or you may be working a job and it's what you're doing to pay the bills. You hate it, which, by the way, is at least 60% of the population. So part of getting in the correct space as far as this perseverance conversation is A, get on focus, B, get on focus with your purpose. But I'm gonna stop there and let you chime in, Dre.
Yeah, especially that last part about finding your focus, because if you don't have a, or at least determining where you want to go, because if you don't know where you want to go, then it's very hard to persist all of the negative stuff that comes at you. So if you don't have your lighthouse, then you don't even know what you're struggling for. You're just kind of, treading water in the ocean. So
Whew. Oh my.
yeah, so you might have endurance and you might be able to stay out there for a long time, but if you're never making any progress towards, ultimate goal or trying to get to shore, then you'll just burn yourself out eventually. So
That was a great example. That was a great example,
yeah, I
Dre.
got the background here too. It's water behind us. I don't know if you saw the last the last podcast, but I had a new background for it, so that's why I was
Yeah,
like thinking of it. So people who will
yeah.
watch it will do. But yeah, and also something you said earlier was about cutting out some of the news because it's not imperative. Like if it's imperative, you will find out about it, and everything else is just kind of made them in a way to make you worry. Like it wants you to be informed about things that are going on, and of course, it is always better to be in the know instead of ignorant. But at what point is too much? It's like we a lot of times on the news, you end up being more concerned about other people's neighborhoods when your neighborhood is in disarray already. So it's like it's like the sense of looking out at other people's issues kind of gives you that satisfaction that it's okay that your neighborhood isn't tip top perfect. But at times, if you really want something to focus on, you need to look locally first, and then address the problems that you have locally. Because I'm sure there's some stuff that you have a much easier way to have an impact on in your own neighborhood as opposed to worrying about what's going on in the next neighborhood or a couple of states over, the laws that they're passing. It's like we have all, and right now where we are, some things that we have to handle. And so if you don't take care of home first, then you know there's no way you can help anybody else. So those were some of the things that it came up. One question. So since we're getting into the conversation, would you say perseverance mean, or what does that look like to you, for someone who perseveres through just difficulties?
Stay in power. Stay in power. I mean, that's in a nutshell, stay in power. And the last time we got together, we just kind of touched on it, but to name drop now, and I brought him up last time, one of our greatest, Les Brown, one of his most popular talks is entitled "It's Not Over Until I Win." It's a powerful talk, and I encourage anybody who is listening live or will listen later, go check that out. Now, the whole talk, I mean, when you look him up, you'll see sound bites all over the place on that particular talk. But the whole talk, the whole original talk, I think is at least an hour. But it would be worth your time to hear the context of where that statement comes from. It's encouraged me on many occasions. And there's so many people in history who've had to persevere, and I've talked about one of them previously because his story is fascinating. Of course, if I asked almost anyone to name the top five significant, I'll frame it that significant presidents in U.S. history,
Mm-hmm.
almost to a man, folks would name Abraham Lincoln amongst them. When you go back and study, now I don't have my 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 notes that I've used in the previous session that kind of outlines his the reason why he's an example of perseverance. Abraham Lincoln, before he was elected president, was the poster child for failure.
Mm-hmm.
He failed at several businesses. He tried to get elected to office on more than one occasion and failed. He spent probably the first 30 plus years of his life just failing. And if he had given up at any of those pit stops, we would never be able to name him among our greatest presidents. And so some of you are thinking about throwing in your towel. There was something that you had, we'll call it a dream. And now for some of us, you do have a focus. You do have something that you're purposefully striving toward. And sometimes we get thrown off by what appears to be instant success, especially in the social media age where we hear about these people and seemingly they go on and sing sing the song that they wrote and they become an overnight success. And having the opportunity to listen to those so-called overnight successes share their stories. Now, to us as outsiders, in many cases, it seems like overnight success. But many of those people had been working at their craft for years. It's just that that particular song took off finally, and that's the case. Now, of course, every now and then you have those people who, yeah, they come up with a video. I'll give you an example, and then I'll let you chime in, Dre. So, a person that's been getting a lot of attention recently is this sister who she was serenaded by Usher
Mm-hmm.
on stage. Of course, Usher famously serenades the ladies on stage. This particular lady has been getting a lot of attention and support from a lot of groups and invitations. She's gone viral after her husband decided to, you know, end their relationship because he felt disrespected by the whole thing. Now, again, this person went viral not for something they were trying to do. It just kind of happened, and opportunities came out. So those kind of things going to happen, right? People hit the lotto. Those kind of things happen.
Mm-hmm.
But most people who we're going to call successful, and this is where I'm going with this in terms of encouraging you to have staying power. Most of the people that you see and consider overnight successes are not. You're just hearing about it, but they had been grinding. Even Dre has shared, even this that you're looking at now. What you're looking at now, Dre will tell you it didn't. This didn't happen overnight. It's been, and some of you who are judging, you say, well, what, y'all not perfect. Y'all can do this better and that better. Of course, and we continue to work on improving. However, what you're seeing, it didn't start off this way.
No, it did not. It's come a long way. Yeah. So when you there was a I was watching an interview of a rapper named Lil Tecca. So he was very young when he's still young right now. I think when he had his first hit song, he was 16. He's 22 now, and he's like really mature amongst like he's gonna be a very great one. He's actually the only artist to have like a platinum, like the youngest person to have a platinum record since Michael Jackson. So,
Really?
so he's but he had like he was talking about in one of his interviews, um, getting like because he had hoop dreams like a lot of young black men do, and he was saying once he had figured out that he wasn't going to the NBA, he that was kind of one of his because his album's called Plan A, so it was just like the this was my always my plan, but he was just saying that he did have other hoop dreams and he just kind of pivoted once he understood he wasn't going or going to the NBA, and that just kind of had me thinking about my situation, like getting cut from the basketball team is like one of the most painful things for for a young black man, well, for me anyway at that time, especially when you have like real dreams of this is what I want to do in the future. And so at a time like that you might, and the reason you continued to keep going was you were trying to persevere, and so but there comes a point when you can kind of calculate or can kind of map out like, okay, how much would it take for me to get here? And it's not even necessarily a skill thing. You start to look at the politics of things, just the school system that you're in, the play, like, and so it's possible, but at the same time you're like, what are the chances that I'm gonna do all of that and not get hurt in the process and stuff? But I was saying that I feel like the way he talks now is like he's not very fearful of failure, and I think it's, it has to do with facing some of those hardships early on in life. Like getting cut from the basketball team was difficult, and it crushed me at the time, but I lived through it, and then all other challenges never really amounted up to me losing out on that original dream. So I'm never really hesitant to, try something new. And I feel like, some people do who kind of, were very talented in high school, were able to make it to college. Like it worked for them for so much of their life that, and not saying that they didn't work hard for it, but it was just that they never experienced that loss. And so now once you experience not getting something that you, or like some people get almost everything that they want in life, or they're
Mm.
so used to things coming naturally that now you don't know how to handle it once things don't go your way. But once you learn earlier, once the first thing doesn't go right, then it gives you some information to then make the right adjustments for. Same thing goes with jobs. I mean, I've been laid off. Like this is like my third time being laid off. So at this point, I'm not even like the way other people would handle it or expect me to handle it. It's like, oh, I don't know what I'll do. Them they hear the market's bad, this that, but it's just like you just do the next step. So you gotta figure something out regardless. So you always just have to persevere and make sure that you continue to just do what you need to do. Like back to what we said, focus on your destination. So every time that you feel that you're in a situation that and you don't see the way out, just take the next step. The next step will get you to the next step, and then the next step, and so you just build upon that, and that's how you continue to persevere despite it's gonna throw life gonna throw something at you daily. So you gonna have to solve some problems, figure it out. But I know everybody is capable of doing it, and it's not that scary once you really just step out there.
So you said a mouthful, and when you talked about those people who feel like they get everything that they want, that's a really tricky space because personally, the people who get everything that they want when they want it usually are people who are probably not aiming high enough because Dr. John Maxwell says that we should all fail forward.
Hmm.
So, going back to this idea of persevering, you were talking about basketball. Right now the NBA playoffs are going on. Of course, one of the most famous stories about failure involves Michael Jordan getting cut from his high school team.
Hmm.
What if he would have quit? The Jordans, so much would not exist if
That
he had
story
quit.
kept me going, honestly, because you hear that, and that's I feel like that's a common narrative. Like, yeah, you don't make the, and it's like, well, Michael Jordan, he still made it after he made JV or however his story went, but just hearing that he went from getting cut to then being the greatest, it gives you that hope and that like yeah. So I mean, but it helped. That also helps for perseverance because that's what motivated me to say that okay, it's not over till I don't make varsity or something like that. So it just gives you a little bit. It's always good for motivation purposes.
And sometimes the adversity we experience is designed to cause us to pivot. Now, talking about another basketball player, I think it was Akeem Olajuwon. I think it was him, Akeem the Dream Olajuwon. If I'm not mistaken, he we know, well, I'm not mistaken about the fact that he's one of the greatest to ever do it. But the part that I'm not 100% sure about is I think Akeem's original sport was soccer,
Mm.
and of course, I know soccer players can be tall too, but typically soccer players are not 7 foot. So
I just seen Wimby playing soccer on some highlights the other day.
really,
Yeah, I was like, I'm surprised too. So seeing it is definitely out of the ordinary. You know, he looking
right,
down, getting the
right,
ball. So yeah, you
right,
don't
right.
typically
And
see that
so,
though.
what if Akeem would have decided, you know what, soccer is my thing. I'm going to stick with soccer. Now, I'm not saying he may have turned out to be an amazing soccer player, but he we would have missed out on a heck of a basketball player if he would have stuck to his guns. And even me, when you talk about the whole laying off thing, there was a particular position that I got fired from, but I wouldn't have gotten fired from that position if I would have had the courage to step away from that position in the first place. Because, some of us pray, and I encourage us to do what Big Mama told us to do. And some of us are in trouble because we won't do that. But that's a whole nother conversation. In my case, I was praying for change, and the response was, okay, well, you need to get away from this job because this job is limiting you. But some of us know that word security. This job is paying the bills. So if I step away from this job, then what? And so Yahweh was like, okay, you're not gonna do it on your own. So I got fired. Now I felt some kind of way about being fired because I was very good at what I was doing. However, that had to take place for me to push into my next. And I was much more successful after the firing than before. So we all know the story of I think it's the eagle. Is the eagle the bird that pushes her offspring out the nest? I think that's the eagle. And sometimes we have to be pushed
Nudge it
out of the
up out
nest,
there.
you know, and then figure out how to fly. Or some I've heard people tell the story of now. This is a tricky way to learn how to swim, but I know more than one person that learned how to swim by being pushed in the water. Just an uncle picking them up and throwing them in the water, and you sink or swim. You know, I don't recommend that, but I've heard those kind of stories before. And there's a whole tutorial platform in the financial arena called Think or well, I think they call it Think or Swim or something like that. But anyway, sometimes we have to get away from our comfort zone and then develop the staying power in our lane. And for some of us, our challenge is we're we're struggling because lane three, but we're still in lane two. And now the obstacles we are experiencing has to do with the fact that we're in the wrong lane. Once we get in our correct lane, that doesn't mean that we won't have challenges, but at least we will have the challenges that belong to us. Some of the challenges we deal with is because we're supposed to be in lane three, so we're getting lane three adversity because that's really where we're supposed to be. But since we're still in lane two, we're gonna take those licks too.
Back to when you were talking about the security aspect of the job, that also goes into perseverance because you have to plan for the unexpected. So that's why that gets back into our talk about budgeting and just being financially responsible. and saving in case of layoffs, or just making sure that you have enough to take care of your necessities if something unexpected does occur. So that's one thing I wanted. And like, back to just the process of losing a job and then coming back and getting more. So you were talking about how you let go from one position, but that opened you up for a bigger and better position. And I would like that, because I've been having a lot of talks with people, and a lot of people. Well, actually, we used to talk about this earlier. We talked about this earlier. Loyalty to a company, to a fault, to where this company is now getting maximum work out of you, but will now refuse to pay you your worth. And it's like that. I see people aiming for positions at their job that may have opened up, and they kind of dangle that in front of you like a carrot. And so then you, like, okay, well, I'm gonna take on this extra project, and to prove that I'm ready for that position, without ever formally. Some people do formally talk to them or informally talk to them about getting a new position, but if it's never finalized, then that's when the job is kind of milking you for your resources. Um, and in those situations, then that's when you have to really have an eye on what your worth is to a company, and understand how to leverage your worth to go to another place and get more money. So, just in the job market, because the company knows how valuable you are. And the reason that, and they, all companies, it's not necessarily the company or the one person, it's just the way businesses work. They're more willing to spend money on recruitment than to spend money on retention. So they're more likely to go hire somebody. They have a bigger budget to go out and hire somebody, as opposed to um, giving somebody internally a raise. So just keep that in mind for people, because I see a lot of people give some of the best years of their life kind of burning themselves out, taking on a lot of weighted work, to the point where they're the superhero. Nothing can happen without them, and not necessarily their approval, but just without their input. So it's like they're asking for your resources at multiple times a day, and to the point now you're spread thin. And so what you now your workload has increased tenfold, and your payment has stayed the same. That it's like, once you get to that point, that's when you understand that you have to look at your value that you have to these companies, and make sure that you're shopping that around to make sure that you're earning the what you're actually worth out here. Because there's a lot of people getting duped by that system. So a lot of people are, they have the secure, and they're afraid to leave, because you have the benefits, you have um, investment portfolios and all of these things, but it's still just like, if you're undercutting your value, then what you're saving isn't even, by the time you could have saved more. So just always know that if you do feel that it's time for you to leave a place, trust that you will receive more once you're out of that place, and you're entering a market with more experience. So you may think I've been learning the same thing for the past 5 years, but you still have that's 5 years of experience, and you can use that experience to leverage and get a new position.
What you said is very, very valuable. And so often, when people decide on a position, they decide on that position primarily based upon salary offer. And you have to be careful, because a lot of folks who are making six figures and above with a company, there's a price to pay for that. And I know people who, if they get an email in the middle of the night, the person that sent that email expects a response in an hour or two, or there's heck to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So Okay, you're making a high salary, but are you able to experience any joy in that position? Because in a lot of cases, that company owns you. You can't. You're not available to attend any of your children's functions.
Mm-hmm.
You eat all your meals on the move. So I'm telling you, you should do a little more homework before you only aside decide to accept the position based upon salary. Ask yourself, okay, exactly why are you willing to pay me this amount?
And that's
What
the question.
what does this what comes with this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, because you know that's a lot of money. So now you really have to ask yourself that question: what am I signing up for by accepting this money? You really have to ask that question. And earlier when you're young and you just looking for any job that'll hire you, and as I've gone through my career, I started off as just like anybody who hire me. I don't know what what I'm looking for. I don't have a dream company that I really would want to work for necessarily. And so, but doing it like that will get you laid off eventually because not saying that you have to absolutely love the company or have always wanted to work like say you wanted to work for Disney or something or some big company that you've always cared about, but you have to be working in a capacity that you're okay with. And what I mean by that is like you have to understand what would be required of you from certain positions. So if you're not comfortable leading meetings, then you might not want the job that's paying $100,000 to be the the team leader. So there's certain things that you need to always keep in mind and know that this is what they're going to be asking you to do consistently. So it's like if you can just put up with it once, like once in a while, that probably won't be the best position for you moving forward because that's something that you'll have to do every day to a high degree of difficulty to an extent. So
And for our audience, let's be clear that we're talking about people who have been in the work field for a minute and now they've got some options and they're looking to make a decision between job A and job B and potentially job C. If you have zero job and you're just entering the market, I think what if I understood what Dre was saying, you got to get in the market because a lot of companies they they're already looking at you sideways because they're saying you don't have any experience. So in the beginning, once when you first graduate from high school or college, field you whatever kind of work that you are entering into, yeah, you do have to take some stuff to get some get some notches under your belt. But even with that, you should have a plan. You know, one of the things I've had the opportunity to talk to some really awesome men, one of them being my own father in the technical field.
mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I hear over and over is that guys who are seeking to enter into the field, they have to constantly be re-engaged with the work. Oftentimes they're goofing off with their cell phone every chance they get. And so staying power, you 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 have to stay off your phone. You have to figure out how to be engaged with. And so in the current climate that we're in, this is not the time to not be doing what you're supposed to be doing unless your plan is B. to do your own thing. And you got that all laid out because this idea that you are the greatest that ever walked on the face of the earth and you don't have any proofs for that and you take a 2 hour lunch break every other day,
Yeah.
you're on the wrong side of this staying power conversation.
Yeah. And when you were talking about the two, basically people being on their phone for 2 hours, you do it. You have to have solid. You have to do solid work. So that is what we're talking about. Once you've been someplace and you know what it's like to actually put in a hard day worth of work. Like when you have that, like a couple of years of experience in that, then you have the ability to go to many places because that's really the experience that most companies are looking. Do you know how to work well with our team, or will you be a good cultural company fit? That's very very important. Actually, the more that I've worked in corporate, I do understand why they need DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, because I feel like as a black man, it's a very difficult thing to adjust to corporate culture. A lot of times, there's no real, I would say, roadmap for that growing up in the way that I've seen. I haven't necessarily been corporate. I guess in software development, it's a little different, but you still have to get into understand corporate culture, the company's culture itself. Um, but coming from a position like working as a delivery driver where you can kind of see all the results or you can kind of tell if you're getting sales. Um, I've always prided myself in being a good worker or a good employee. Just I always want to help the business to the business that I'm working for to help them achieve their goals. So especially when I struggled at my first couple of positions, that was it wasn't feeling good for me as someone who prides themselves in working hard and being a very big asset to a team. So um, there's times where you have to understand what your what people are looking for, how people are looking for you to perform at a certain position or a job, and no one's really there to hold your hand. Like I learned how to develop from going to a boot camp, which gave me a glimpse into what that life would look like, or just kind of what a day to day would look like, but it didn't necessarily prepare me to for certain roadblocks I'd run into, and so just trying to adjust in a space where you already do feel a little bit marginalized because there's not many other black people around. So you don't have that, like in school, you can kind of gravitate towards other people who look like you, um, or you at least know that you're in the same socioeconomic situation, just being going to the same high school. But in once you're in corporate, you're working with people and coming from Ivy League backgrounds, and you're just seeing, the thoroughness that they go through. You're seeing the different qualities of education, so you learn a lot as you get into these other positions, and you do just you learn things. So you can't go in expecting to know everything that you need to know for a position, and sometimes if you don't adjust fast enough, then they might let you go. So, and that's just part of the game.
So there's something I want to say about DEI. DEI is very important when the original intent of DEI is actually followed. So coming out of, particularly coming out of the unique experience that blacks in America has experienced, a lot of the DEI programs were designed to help the former enslaved get an opportunity to participate. Now, we know through people like Dr. Henry Gates that there were other groups in this country that were ostracized and discriminated against. And so some of those other groups were inclusive in being given the opportunity for set asides. But what has happened in the more recent iteration of DEI, a lot of people who are not a part of those groups, tra- traditionally discriminated against groups that have been trying to catch up, primarily Black folks, are not the ones that have been benefiting from the recent version of DEI. People have been dragged across the water and given, especially in the technology field, people have been dragged across the water and given positions that Black Americans remain locked out of. And so um, we'll probably at some point need to just have a conversation about this whole DEI thing and just flesh some stuff out. So yes, DEI, when it effectuates the groups that have been historically harmed, is a good thing. But the past 20 years, at least, especially, many of the people in that group are not the primary beneficiaries of DEI these days.
Well, I would say because the way I'm not even speaking of DEI from the perspective of the hiring process. I'm speaking more from once you're actually in a position, and I'm talking like in some of these corporate positions where that culture, if it's not intentionally, or if they're not intentionally trying to accommodate for people who aren't typically in that space, then it becomes very apparent that this space wasn't necessarily created with you in mind. So that's the part where I'm saying that port, but that's all included in DEI. So the same way that other, a lot of, they say a lot of white women use DEI in order to get positions. It's like space has to be carved out for them as well, because it's so, I guess I would just say white male dominated, but there's a lot more but it's just kind of structured that way to where that's kind of the most prevalent person who you're gonna see in those spaces. But honestly, at a lot of the companies that I've worked at previously. It's changed. Like I see a lot of diversity in my field. Personally, I work with a lot of Indians, um, and at my previous company there was a good amount of black people there as well, but it was a lot more local. So it was based in South Carolina. It was a big company, so I think a lot of people had been working there for quite a while. So it's but it's still one of those things that, in terms of just having a space where people do feel like their welcome is important. And if you want to work for a company, that does kind of just show that you don't necessarily, because we need access to these opportunities for the experience. That's the big thing. It's like, yeah, we don't need to spend our whole life at a certain company and want to retire from a company, but we do still need that access for experience purposes, because if you don't ever get that experience, then you don't know what it's like to run a real company. So you need that experience in order to build for yourself eventually. That should be the goal that you're persevering towards. You would want to be self-sufficient to a degree, but yeah, we need that experience. Like the same, I mean, and some people, a lot of people get sold on the people who become millionaires over, or young millionaires, by just having a very good idea. And there's always that possibility, but just because you missed out on that window doesn't mean that you'll never get the chance to own your own business, or have a great idea and launch it later on in life. So and until you get to that point, then you should be working, and all of your work should be going towards your ultimate goal. So if you want to, um, in my case, I always wanted to build my own app. So all of my positions have been towards technology, just so I'm like, okay, it keeps it in the back of my mind. It's like, okay, I'm learning this stuff for the job, but it has a dual purpose for it. So I'm double gaining. I'm taking advantage of the fact that I got to learn this to make income now, and that I got to learn this in order to make my ideas come to life later on.
And what you just described was a pathway towards perseverance, because you may be in a job where, or with a company where the diversity sucks. There is no plan on paper. You see diversity, but in their culture there's no diversity. But again, that's a whole conversation. Um, but when you have a plan and you say, okay, I'm going to learn this particular skill, this trade, because I understand that, yeah, I'm gonna have to put up with some crap. I'm gonna have to persevere, but I need to get a certain level of knowledge while I'm at this company so that I can move on and do my own thing. But again, some people, they bang out way too soon before they get the information necessary to do their own thing. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that's a great example. You have to have a plan. You have to go into, and so that's one of the things too. Even talking about people who are new into the workforce, one of the most valuable things, and we've talked about this in other episodes. One of the most valuable things you can do is find a mentor, find somebody that's been where you are, so that they can help you put together a plan, instead of you just getting up and going to work and getting paid, and you look up 3 years down the road. Because at the end of the day, those people who are running the company, they are they are looking for certain qualities. They're looking for people who are demonstrating that, of course, they're productive, but then also demonstrating that they want to help the company move forward, a certain pep in your step. And so you could still have that pep in your step and have your plan B in operation. Sometimes it's hard to do that though without tapping into the power of mentorship. And to the point I think you were making, at some companies, you might not find that mentorship readily available. So then you have to tap into associations and groups outside of your company to find that mentorship. But you're going to have to find it. That mentorship is not going to come looking for you. That's not how that works.
It's not. And it doesn't even need to necessarily be a plan B. It's more of just having some wiggle room within your plan A. A job can be in your plan A to still get to your goal. You just have to, and that's really being thorough in planning out your plan A. So it's like, okay, yeah, I have to have a job from for 5 years and save up enough until I'm able to rent out this place. So it's like plan to have income. Like you don't have to automatically make money off of your dream or anything. Like what we're doing right now is like I haven't been getting paid from this ever, and it's just. But I've always been working on other positions, just knowing that I want to invest more into what this is something that I'm actually passionate about.
And for some people, they have to learn that you may be planting seeds in one area, and then your blessings will come in another area.
Mm-hmm.
That's in some contexts people call that paying it forward. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, and some people get stuck because they're thinking that, oh man, why would I do that if I'm not getting paid? But I'll never forget a an interview that Sean Combs did some time ago. And he talked about how in his industry now, suffice it to say, you know, some extracurricular may have also gone on along the way. But in his industry, when people were looking to break in, it was understood, especially on the record label side, it was understood that you were going to intern, you were going to be an apprentice, and it was going to be a while before you saw paper because you were learning the trade. Your payment was that you got to learn under this expert. What we replaced apprenticeship with is college, because back in the day, you would be the apprentice of uh, a silver maker,
Mm-hmm.
and you would train under his expertise. You'd work for him. You might get a little small stipend, but the understanding was that you were training to be him at some point, and you weren't incurring all the debt that many of us incurred getting an expensive college degree, because in many instances the college degree doesn't directly prepare you to do anything. I
Right.
think I might have shared just the other week that for a lot of people, all college does is put you in a position where you can learn. That's
Right.
it. And so, yeah, if you get the opportunity to apprentice under an expert and they are willing to share their knowledge with you gratis, don't always think about it in terms of you being used and all that kind of stuff, because you only know a fraction of what this person knows, and you're trying to be the sponge. Many many of the top people in a lot of industries, they ended up in their space playing the sponge. Now, of course, if you're really up on your game, you're not going to play sponge forever. It's your fault if you end up the sponge forever. That's not the goal. That shouldn't be the goal. The goal should be, I'm going to learn fast.
Yeah. And I think also in reference back to our last conversation when we were talking about like master teachers, so when you go to university, you may not have one master teacher. I think college and university kind of makes you more a jack of all trades. So you are learning from these experts, but in small doses. So you're getting a little bit of knowledge from, like, if we're looking at it from like from a blacksmith, or getting some from this carpenter or this tailor. So in this way, it's like you may learn the basics of each industry, but you can take you can take what you learn from each professor and then apply it differently, and that's something that I had to learn later on in life after graduation, is just the different challenges different professors may have introduced to me, or certain classes may have held for me. The way that I persevered through that in order to get my degree is the same way that I'm able to persevere and, find new positions, find better paying positions, just because now I understand the process that it takes in order to complete a paper. So once you know how to complete things, once you have new tasks placed in front of you, you know what the definition of done is. So you can kind of just, you know what it feels like to know that you checked all of your boxes and that you're doing all that you can in order to make sure that you're setting yourself up to receive the best grade or receive the desired outcome in a position.
You said something, and I'm already sensing that we I, I I've still got a whole lot of stuff over here. We're gonna have to do a part two on this perseverance thing. I think it'll help a lot of people. But you said something, a mouthful. You said you learned how to complete things. Some people are getting whipped because they don't finish anything.
Yeah.
They've got a million open products. And even those people who are trying to get into the rap game, finish one rhyme, finish one.
Get an album
You
out.
started working on this particular rhyme and you've been working on it forever. You still haven't finished it. You got a project that you started in the studio. You still haven't finished it. You don't finish anything. So how persevere? We haven't even gotten to that because you you feel like you're getting beat up because you're all over the place. You won't finish anything.
Perseverance and perfection are not the same thing, and that's one thing you have to be okay. Like we were talking about earlier, you have to be okay with failing. Like if you're afraid to fail, then you're just afraid to start in general. Like you have to start everything. Failures might not be an option, but you have to know that it's a possible outcome, and you have to still move forward regardless. Because there's nothing is worse than not starting at all. I can tell you. I can tell you that. And once you really start, it's like you can fail as much. Nobody really cares about when you fail. You have to at least set up parameters in your life to make sure that you're secure when you fail. Like you do have to have safety precautions, and I'm speaking financially, and you know that doesn't mean just go out here and say, okay, I'm putting all my money in here, and if I fail, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you have to take certain risks, and a lot of things, the only thing you're fearing at that point is getting a no. Like, so you might want to get a new job and you're not even sending out resumes because you're afraid that you're going to get rejected. So that's the type of fear or failure that you can't. I send out hundreds through my through my career. I've sent out hundreds of resumes and only had three successful ones. So it's like the rate is very low in most cases. I've had a little bit more successful than that. It's just in terms that actually turned into something is different. So, and you have to be willing to you know go on calls, embarrass yourself in interviews. Like you have to go through all of that in order to get to the other side. It's no easy
And,
way.
and some people listening to us straight, part of their challenge is in their mind, they see themselves as a boss. So, number one, if you see yourself as a boss, then while you are operating as employee, then be the employee you would want as a boss. Would you want you performing that way
Right.
to work for your company? That's number one. And then number two, if you're going to be a boss, then you have to be reliable to complete things. If someone hires you to make beats for them and it takes you 3 weeks to get back to them,
You lost. He out of a job, sir.
Trey, help them out. Is that gonna work out for
They're gonna find they had 30 beats, and then the next day you got. That's the thing. You also got to keep up with other people's output. Nobody's waiting for you to get right. It's like you have to come out here and compete. That's what we talked about that before. It's like it's really competition out here. You can't just go out here, do what everyone else is doing, and expect to get picked out because you're special. Nobody is special. I can tell you for a fact, nobody is special. It don't matter what your backstory is. If you cannot perform the task that a company needs you to do, then they will do without you. I promise you, and
them? And
they'll
it does.
replace you.
And here's the other side of it. You may be special, but you still have to produce because no one's gonna F with you if you don't produce. People still want the product.
Uh-huh.
So they may have came to you acknowledging that you're special, but then you still have to provide a product.
That's real, and that's the same thing with even when we're speaking about entertainment, artists who become they get popular for a certain sound. It's like we can't just continue to revere you for your past creations. Like eventually people want to hear, like, people come to you because they like your perspective, they like your story, so it's something that only you can provide for people. So if you stop producing it, then people's attentions will fade and go other places. So it's just always a constant. You have to be constantly creating in order to stay in the forefront of people's mind, and that's performing to your highest levels. And sometimes people are like, "Oh, I didn't sign up for this," but it's like, yeah, if you want to get millions of dollars to keep people's attention, then you need to put some effort in. You need to do something a little bit special at least.
But Dre, I think this might be a good stopping point. And hopefully, if if everything remains the same, we'll pick up on this theme because there were some other points that I wanted to hit,
Hmm.
but I also realize that we may not be able to hit them all in one session. So
Got you. Okay. Yeah, no, I think we got to talk about some good things, important things. A lot of people are going through similar things. So yeah, I'm with y'all. I know a lot of people are facing layoffs in the world right now. So I'm just here to say, it's not the end of the world. There's Even if you don't have anything, it's like you still have tomorrow to. But think about what your next step is. That's like if you're in a rut, just think what is the next best thing that I can do, and take it one day at a time. You don't have to get all your money tomorrow. It doesn't have to be next week. Just be in going in the right direction. Set your destination and head in the right direction, and persevere through the obstacles and road that's ahead of you.
and like India already said, there's hope. There's hope.
There is
There's
hope.
hope.
So, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you guys next time.